All right, here it is. It's Monday, March 22nd. Hope everybody's doing good. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for joining the show, my friends. Had a great episode of The Grail out on Thursday. Check that out, my second podcast, The Grail. It is available on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, Libsyn, all over the place. Perry Shao was my guest, so check that out. But my guest today, you want to talk about guests. Often I write down dream guests that I hope to get and, a vision board, sort of say. And this man today has been on the list for many years. Even before I had the podcast, I was hoping to be able to talk to this man and just meet him one day. I will tell you, back in 1995, I went to the Fillmore solo and witnessed one of the greatest live performances I've ever seen. And you've got to take in mind that I've seen over a couple thousand shows, and that does include stuff like Prince, AC/DC, on, Power Age Tour, Van Halen, Springsteen Reunion Tour, Wilco on the Bean there, Nick Cave on the numerous tours with Nick Cave. You get my point. I've seen some fucking live shows. And then there's those shows that you were just like, was that even real? My guest today is Sananda Maitreya, formerly known as Terence Trent D'Arby. Now, a lot of you, I understand, are part-time or just curious music lovers. You remember the hits. It's cool. I understand. A lot of people are like that. And you're probably going like, oh, I remember him, Wishing Well, and Sign Your Name, the debut record. So much more to this man than that. I followed his career for a long time, and even I fell off wondering what happened to him. And I dug into it about 8 years ago and was like, oh, wow. He's been making records the entire time. And imagine the joy I had of knowing that I had all these records I could catch up on, which was fantastic. I'm telling you, this guy is a freak of nature. He is on this planet to share the high watermark of songwriting and performing. That is what he is here for. And man, I am just so happy I got to see him not once, but 2 times. I did see him in '87 at the Warfield on the debut record. And it's just unreal how great this man is. To sit down with him for a long form interview, like I said, dream come true. And he's got a brand new record out, Pandora's Playhouse. It's a double album. It's out right now. It came out Friday. I'm telling you, man, this man is deep. This is one of those episodes where I was like, wow. It's on. Just a back and forth of some incredible deep inside look of spirituality, the music business, mushrooms, weed. I mean, we go all over the place. Hip hop, R&B, the 90s, the 80s. It was just a damn pleasure to have this man on, and I hope to get to see him live again and get to talk to him in person. Before I do get into the episode, I want to tell you this episode is brought to you by my number one sponsor, CBD Lion. Now, let me ask you, you got any joint aches? You got any anxiety? Are you having trouble sleeping? Whatever you got, I've got it for you. I have the solution. CBDlion.com. 100% organic CBD tinctures, bath bombs, sports tapes, Well, they got it all, man. They got it all. And you use the code DEAN for 20% off. Use the code DEAN, DEAN. That is cbdlion.com. They even have pet tinctures and pet treats, which is great. If your pet's a little achy or kind of a kook, get them some of that. For the humans, they've got the edibles, the gummies, the tinctures, the topicals, the vapes, all of it. Roll-ons, I use the roll-on for my neck, and now my ankle's all messed up. CBD Lion. These guys are family-owned, third-party tested. It ain't that truck stop bullshit, so get it. CBDLion.com. Thank you, CBD Lion. Love you for sponsoring the podcast. All right, guys. My Patreon is rocking. Patreon.com/Dean Del Rey. All kinds of bonus goodies on there and Zoom festin'. Here's the new Patreoners: Rob Adams, Craig Solomon, Jacqueline Stratton, Patrick Rediger, SE54, Dave Hill, and Grant Holt. There you go. All new Patreoners, all out there supporting the Del Raisers. All right, I hope you guys are good. Hope you have a fantastic week. Stay healthy and stay happy. Don't forget, I will be in Alameda, the Bay Area, May 21, 22 at the Alameda Comedy Club. Get tickets. There's just a few left. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel and leave a review for this podcast on iTunes. Go back and listen to all this back music you have. Check out Sananda's back catalog. You're going to dig it. You're going to dig it. You fell off. I get it. It's time to get back on the train. Tell a friend. Candles lit. Enjoy it. Welcome to the show, my man. Introduce yourself.
My name is Sananda Maitreya, and I'm an artist who lives in Milano, Italy, and I work from here. And I've just presented a new record called Pandora's Playhouse, and I think that it might be worth our time to bring attention to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to start off by saying happy birthday to you. You have the same birthday as my mother.
Well, that's awesome. That's pretty awesome. So you know what we're like.
Yeah. You're a Pisces. Do you dig into that kind of stuff? I mean, I believe in that horoscopes and the flavor of the stars. How about you?
I believe that we have been left collectively as cultures. We've been left the truth. But of course, cultures having become commercialized have certainly diluted or obstructed or twisted a significant portion of it. So, for example, astronomy and astrology used to be just one science. And then when the church's influence came in, it became separated, the science part from then the part that we now consider astrology. And it was considered wise, if you were considering marriage prospects seriously, that no one from a good family would consider to take on someone else's marriage without first checking with the stars to see whether or not the love was favorable. Because as you know, just because two people love one another doesn't necessarily mean they're compatible. So the idea that there's truth all around us, that the nature, the universe, spirit, everything is communicating the truth of the universe all of the time. And it's just a matter in which language is symbolic or otherwise that you perceive them. So the answer to your question is that there has to be some reason why I was born on March 15th. And I trust that, there are aspects that can symbolize what that kind of means. So for me, those symbols aren't just the emojis of their time. Those symbols are basically written in language, coded language, in an emotional language, which is what symbols are, that we can all understand. So whatever the fish means, I'm sure if my programmed mind does not necessarily know beyond what it has read, surely my unconscious mind understands clearly what it means.
That's deep, man. I believe in that too. I believe in that too. I know. I believe in a lot of things. I believe that you're born with a map of your life already laid out, and
a blueprint. Yeah, that makes sense.
I really do believe that. I really do, and it's there's something way higher than just one thing in life. There's science, there's stars, there's faith, there's all kinds of stuff out there that guides us.
Well, there's two things about that. A is that we all, I think, we come basically, of course, having accepted the challenges that then we call karma. So I do believe that if the universe is not just a random event, so I believing in a unifying intelligence that the universe is a part of, then obviously you are collaborating not only with the circumstances and the timing and the numbers of the logistics of your birth, because all those numbers and logistics, of course, matter. Because every few hundred yards, the Earth has a different enough frequency and personality that's going to influence everything that's a part of it. So the people are a part of the land, and the land are a part of the people. It's just that way. The same matter that it consumes the stars is the same matter that consumes us, and we are star matter in different density format. At the same time, collaborating with that. So that's like the left hand of the situation. The right hand of the situation is if you're born into a bloodline, there are bloodline responsibilities. So you've also agreed to take on your part, your place in the part of a multi-generational drama that's out unfolding and ostensibly, hopefully, improving and refining itself as each person in every subsequent generation takes their place. Hopefully imbued with more knowledge, perhaps, and more freedom to express what is healthy to express in order to better realize ourselves. So those are the two things, forces really in motion, is the fact that there are coordinates and numbers of truth. I mean, coordinates are truth. With that, then this burden that you've agreed to help your family carry and your contribution towards making that burden less of a burden for the next generation.
Let me give you a little rundown here of me. I'm 55. I played music most of my life. I'm a comedian now.
You have to be.
Yeah, you have to be a comedian. You're so right there. You're so right. Back in 87, I saw you at the Warfield in San Francisco. One of the greatest shows I've ever seen. I've seen thousands of shows, and that is no exaggeration. But in 95, I saw you at the Fillmore on the Vibrator tour in San Francisco, and it could be the top 5 shows I've ever seen in my life. And that is the truth, my friend.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That was a great band, and that was a great time. And also, I think I had an incentive that I had a chip on my shoulder, pretty strong, pretty big, because I was still kind of feuding with Sony at the time, and I was particularly having problems with the American branch, and they were kind of, I felt sticking their nose in matters in other parts of the world where it didn't belong, but they were the American branch and had the kind of clout to do so. So it was just one of those things where in your heart that whatever the conspiracy may or may not be, that that the work that you're doing and the time that you are in that stage of your life as an artist, you know it's legit. You know it, and you know that you have a company the size of Sony, which is basically a world company, world superpower, if you will. Just the confusion that reigns, the politics and how it just becomes, the closer you get to the essence of power, the less, as you know, it becomes about the art, the less it becomes about the expression, and the more it becomes about its shape. And there was just even this feeling that, Tommy Mottola, who was running the company at the time, worldwide pretty much, was kind of intent on teaching me a lesson, was intent on showing me that unless I bowed to his will, to his vision of what I should be as an artist, that he was just going to basically continue to completely cold shoulder my scenario. And so, it's kind of like that mythological, the prodigal son sort of thing, like, the middle finger, I'm going to show you that you're just a very silly man. Because, I can't apologize, and for feeling at the time is that it feels like I was being punished for being what I was. And I knew in my heart, I mean, it's hard to explain this to someone who isn't a musician, who isn't an artist, who isn't an antenna, who isn't a very sensitive antenna that can just, register all the various shifts that happens in the energy forms and consciousness around you, that you just know when you're doing something that's meeting the moment and that the people are going to agree. If I can just expose them to this, I know that they will agree that this was worth the time I put into it. And, it was just kind of the standoff, the Mexican standoff, if you will, that I had with Sony at the time. It was just provided this additional animus, this fuel that then your band also takes on. It becomes like a band against the world. And so there is that extra anger, that extra tension, and it's like you get a group of guys together, they even like that. They even like to rally around something that they can, tie the horses to, if you will. And it was kind of, that's what it became. It's like, fuck Sony tour. That's what really that whole tour was. And, it was also, I just remember, such a strange and surreal time, because while I'm going through this depression of my company actively suppressing me, and I mean, there was no support on that tour at all from them. Basically, you'll get the Japanese will offer you some crazy money for a tour, and so you'll, basically amortize some of that towards, the territories that you can use some help that I wasn't getting from Sony. And they wouldn't even, to teach me a lesson. I didn't even get, any local promotion. And hey, you'll be in town tomorrow playing at the Beacon Theater. Nothing. So much of our traffic was day of traffic where, people hear, what, who? He's here? Oh, cool. I'll go see him. But there was that part of dealing with such a depressive part of my life, while at the same time being really, really moved by the fact that I knew that I had a great band. I knew that we had something special and that we had a chance to present that regardless of the circumstances that were around it.
Well, that's an absolute crime, because what I witnessed, and like I said, seeing thousands of shows, was pretty mind-boggling. I could not believe how explosive you were. Of course, you were fantastic in 87. In 87, you were unreal. You were smooth. You had that cool kind of R&B flavor. But by the time you get to the Vibrator tour, it's beyond most things I'd ever seen. It was unreal how organic and full-blown rockin' that it was. I could not believe what I was seeing. And I think everybody in that room that night probably still talks about that show to this day, because I do. People are like, who are the greats you saw? And when I mention that show, they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, 100%,
Well, thank you first of all. I appreciate it. There's also the fact that there are certain places. I think the first time I didn't actually start smoking pot, believe it or not, until I was 33. But I remember once somebody had gotten us a bag of shrooms.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember before had brought the shrooms to San Francisco. Or we had brought the shrooms up from LA. Doesn't matter. It was somewhere in California, shrooms happened. So I remember choosing 5 dates on the tour schedule where I was going to experiment with the shrooms.
That's amazing.
And of course, when I saw San Francisco, of course, I said that's got to be one of the places. But I've always been as much of a musician, a music historian, and an appreciator of music culture, and going back to like Bach and these motherfuckers. So it's always great that to be able to have some kind of context while your mind is being blown towards something. And I just remember that gig at the Fillmore. I just remember at one point I could literally feel the presence of Joplin and Otis and a lot of those people who had played the Fillmore and left energy there. It's like there's that place is steeped in energy of our culture. Our Western literature has come through that place in a big, big way. And so I just remember having this incredible experience where at one point the music is going and I turn around to face the drummer, but I remember looking up like at the ceiling while I was shooting some water in my mouth. And I remember just hearing myself surrender to the muse and say something like, I only want to serve your will.
Wow.
And I just remember like such a powerful moment. But I do distinctly remember kind of looking towards the back of the hall and like feeling and sensing that there was a lot of great old spirits that had come together to support me that night. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I've been on that stage many times, and I understand what you're talking about. When you're in there, you also
it's
almost
the sacred plane.
Oh yeah, and you feel a duty to deliver for not just the audience, but for the room. Yeah. I believe in the gods of Olympus. That's why I've centered my mythology to include them. So. I believe in rock gods and all that shit. I believe that basically, angels take lives and they serve their culture in the way that best moves them and provides for them. So, I have no problem literally seeing, John Lennon as a saint. I have no problem literally seeing, these people, Janis Joplin as an angel, and they come, they spend their time. For me, it only makes sense that Kurt Cobain was some kind of angel form. He came, he set it up, he did it, boom, he moved. He did it. Like those type of beings don't need to spend more time on earth than they need to do what it is that they come to set up and do. Wow, that's heavy you say that, because I feel that some people are set on this earth to reset the barometer when the landscape of art is completely in a shit mode. Somebody magical comes around, resets it to give people inspiration like, hey, man, you got to get back on track. And then they disappear. They're just here to deliver a message. And I've said that for years. And that's amazing that you say the same thing.
Yeah. Sometimes the evidence is that, people like Hendrix, if you knew their spirit, then you realize that those kind of spirits aren't long for this world. I mean, let's be honest, overall, we're some pretty cruel bitches. I mean, for all of the wonderful achievements of our humanity and has accomplished, we're some bitches and we know it. Yeah. We're not really fooling anybody. And so basically, not everybody can take us for too long. Like people like Jimmy and Kurt and Amy and these motherfuckers and Janice and Brian Jones, they exist on a certain frequency and a wavelength where relative to our own world and our own frequency that we inhabit, it's just very dense and heavy for them. And that's why they often get involved in drugs and alcohol, which are for them a gateway to an easier consciousness, a gateway to a place that supports their energies better. So often, those people have to do that because they're not long for this world. They don't have to worry about their liver when they're 50 or 60 years old. Those people kind of sense, I'm here to, like you said, deliver the message, to drop this bomb and leave and go. Because there's other shit to do besides hang around with these crazy fuckers all the time.
Yeah. And that's true. The crazy motherfuckers of the business. I get it. Let me ask you a little bit about psychedelics. Do you still engage in it? I do some microdosing, and keeps me level when I get into dark spaces. And I do believe that mushrooms have definitely opened up amazing pockets in my mind that brought me some awesome creativity. How about you?
Or it's an accident that is here. So accepting that nature knows and understands her own laws, before the dominance of the church, it was normal. It was even expected that we find out these things. I know the Mayan culture, for example, it was a part of the ritual. It was expected as a part of the mental health of the Mayan culture, was that you were expected to spend a certain amount of time a week, a certain amount of hours a week, ingesting these various things for the purpose of clearing out your carburetor, of clearing out your consciousness, because the mind just gets stuck with all the data that we have to process through constantly all the time. The data never sleeps. So even when we turn off the data, we still have to peruse the data, in our minds that are the reflection of all the data. So it's all just data all the fucking time. And so it's clear that, the Hindus believe that Krishna invented marijuana, the ganja, because he understood that the suffering of man needed something to help alleviate it. So the myth is that he went into the mountains, Krishna, and he created this herb from what he had already found on Earth, and he brought back down the mountain this magical herb, they call ganja. So it's clearly our understanding, our world, the world that we live in, that we're a part of, has a much better understanding and much less judgment than we do. So I think personally, the only thing I miss from those days when I was single and could be more irresponsible is mushrooms. I'm certainly sure that it, like marijuana, is ageless and has nothing to do with how old you are or anything like that. I just think in respectable, responsible doses, it is one of the best things available to us to push the reset button on the odometer, which is very, very important. And it's a part of the maintenance we should be expected. Spiritual and psychological maintenance should be given more weight in our cultures. But I have 2 young boys, and I'm not yet ready to commit myself back to the process of the shrooms. But I'm absolutely reminding myself that at some point, I do want to make contact with them again. I think Washington, D.C. just legalized them or something.
Yeah, same with Oakland, California, and Portland, I believe, also for they're finding some heavy studies that it helps with depression and it helps with a lot of things, addiction.
No, dude, they're not finding these studies. They're finally releasing these studies that have been suppressed for decades. Yeah. So, look, we belong to the earth, and all of her garden belongs to us. Everything in its measure was meant to be used. So the idea of homeopathy, as you know, being a Californian, is that if this much venom will kill you, then this much venom will heal you.
Yeah.
Or cure you. So everything in its measure. When we can figure out and remember how to use the fruits of the earth, obviously we will be much better further along. But of course, if that's going against the industry's money, if that's going against pharmaceutical and other the titans and their empire's money, then obviously that's going to just be some pie in the sky shit. But the reality of the situation is the economic crisis that we have been living through is what allows governments to quit this nanny state bullshit and just admit that they need the revenue.
Yep. You're right. Let me ask you something. So by the time that I'm seeing you're 4 albums in, and you seemed like one of the most seasoned performers, singers, songwriters I'd ever seen. What was your buildup for that? Was it pretty much natural, or growing up? I know you were a boxer growing up, but at the same time, were you studying music? Were you rehearsing, writing songs? Because in '87, on the first album, you had 4 smashing hits. So was Was it just this thing of like, okay, I'm not going to be boxing anymore. I'm going to play music. How does this all happen? And who were your guys? Was it Curtis Mayfield? Was it Stevie Wonder? Was it rock and roll? Where were you at?
That's a pretty multi-tiered question. First of all, a seed is always going to be what it was meant to become. So it's not, the question presumes that I kind of had all of this choice. As you alluded to much earlier in our conversation, it was my destiny. I was meant to do this. This is part of what I accepted as the challenge of my karma. And so everything that I did in the meanwhile was just to prepare me for the life that was to come. Even my life as a boxer and my life in the military gave me two different skill sets of memory, of recollection, of reflection, where I could then access different parts of myself that I wasn't really aware that I really had to such a degree until I were involved in those particular mediums, in those places, in those particular disciplines, excuse me. So, but both in the military and in boxing, I realized that I was a warrior. I realized that I had a tremendous amount of resolve, that I couldn't be easily pushed around, and that I did have some kind of ingrained respect for order and for harmony and for just making sense of situations. So you look back on your life and realize everything was just necessary training and preparation for the life that you agreed to take on. But as far as, the first memory I have is being 2 years old and being mesmerized by "I Want to Hold Your Hand and She Loves You." So the Beatles were my first awakening. And when I first heard the Beatles, that's when I realized that that's what I wanted to do with my life. I guess, I grew up in an environment where my parents were ultra and super religious and very, very conservative. So I wasn't even allowed to listen to any music that wasn't gospel music until after I was like 15 or something really bizarre like that. But that's what the challenge was. What this created in me was a thirst and a hunger for music that I wasn't allowed to listen to, which is basically the reverse psychology of the situation. Worked out very well for me because I did not inherit a sense of genres of music.
Awesome.
I inherited a sense of music. So I feel this, I don't feel this. It was never really anything other than that. I've always been fascinated and intrigued by sound. So there were just so many elements to listening to music and listening to records that were just a science and a great, great fascination for me, and something that I knew that I wanted to engage myself in and immerse myself in fully as possible. But along the way, there was also the Rolling Stones, which were a huge part of my growth. I actually became a Sam Cooke fan because of Rod Stewart. I was mesmerized first by Master Rod. I'm still a huge fan. I still regard him as one of my absolute pantheon Mount Rushmore heroes.
One of the best ever. The faces are mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
And even the early records. I even go all the way up to Young Turks. Young Turks is a fantastic song.
So is Baby Jane.
You're right. Right.
It was weird because probably jealousy, but it's very difficult it was very difficult for people to just accept and look past the perception of his lifestyle that he was projecting at the time. Because I can remember reading things about him that would always take the time to comment about, how rock star or LA he looked, or how cliched they felt, and over the top was his rockist presentation. Of course, I didn't grow up with those politics. I literally saw him as, so Sam Cooke is taken out of that particular, So the spirit that informs the physical life that was Sam Cooke, who was clearly an angel of mercy. If you can't hear that, then you need help. Okay. He's taken out of his vessel. He can't work in his body anymore. It's broken. And so he has the option to embody another form or to become the guardian angel or the guiding spirit or light or collaborate with another form because, okay, he does have these angel rights. And so he sees his last life, that he took that life as far as he could, working with the instrument of a Black man in that time, in that place, in that culture. And so the next life he looked at and he saw somewhere this guy with Scottish roots growing up in London. And he said, that one's mine.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. Now, of course, if you ask Master Rod, Sam was his God as well. That was his guy. And various other people I've met who would consider themselves like a fraternity, the sons of Sam, if you will. But he was huge for me because one of the things that's not appreciated as much about Sam Cooke at this current moment is that much is lost in the pursuit of the praise of his instrument. But he's one of the foundational fathers of the pop song. The pop songs he wrote, people weren't writing pop songs like that before. And he was just as influential as Buddy Holly in establishing what a pop song was. We forget that. But you listen to those classics, he was making that shit up, and it was those songs didn't exist like that before.
Yeah, there's no blueprint.
They were simple, they were direct, but they were gospel, but they were street. It was, and it's interesting because him and Buddy Holly were in fact very fond of one another as people. They were friends. It was also the fact that, Sam was intrigued by what Dylan was doing and decided that, he should be also reaching in and writing songs like that, which is, for me, I think one of the reasons why he died so young is because he was turning his voice, that very, very, very powerful and life-transforming voice, into a political tool, a vehicle, a conscious political tool. And that's why I think they took him away. But then I just think he morphed into this new guy called Rod Stewart. And he did what you would expect. He fused the music that he had created in his time with the music that was being opened and made in Rod Stewart's time. And I mean, another thing that we don't give Rod Stewart enough credit for is his magnificently long fucking body of work.
Unbelievable. He
didn't just make singles, he made whole albums. Atlantic Crossing, Night on the Town, all that whole period where he was opening a whole new chapter that, like Sam Cooke in his lifetime, those kind of songs didn't exist before, that were equally as much soul as they were rock, as they were folk, as they were old fucking Scottish folk songs. I mean, it was like just Rod Stewart created a new fucking music. Now, parallel to the Stones, who were also creating a fusion of the blues and pop music in their own unique way, it gets lost that Rod Stewart had as much to do with that as anyone. Because you go back and you listen to those records, and it's not his sense of songmanship, whether he wrote them or whether he chose them, he's always been a master. I not only learned how to sing from Rod Stewart, but I learned how to put together albums that have a certain consistency of emotion. And he was just, he hopefully one day he's singled out more as someone who should be honored more for not just the hits that he made, but for how he opened up a new chapter, a new place in rock and roll.
Well, that's amazing that you say that, because I always say he's totally underrated as a songwriter, but also a performer. And if you look at his stage presence, especially from the Faces all the way up to around 80, it's some of the most incredible live rock and roll singing I've ever seen. And nobody really talks about him, even if you want to just the surface people that just know him for "Do You Think I'm Sexy?" That song alone, I would love to have in my repertoire. It is a smasher classic of a hit tune.
But again, he transformed. Okay, so he gets shit because you're a rocker and you want us to believe you're a rocker. You're doing this disco song. Well, the Stones did it, of course.
Yep.
Miss You, which is another classic.
Great.
So the end of the day, we call it disco, but he just made an old fucking shuffle record really sexy, and just and gave it a disco production or whatever. But I don't even see it as disco. It happened during that era. We call it disco. It's just a great fucking record.
I never thought of it as disco. I thought of it as the soul of Studio 54. I always thought there was disco, which was cheesy, disco duck, that bullshit. But then there was this soul of Studio 54 that influenced the globe, not just New York and the coast. I'm talking about the world wanted to be cool. The world wanted to snort coke and dance all night, and the world wanted to look sexy. And the influence of that is monumental, man. And that is with Miss You and Do You Think I'm Sexy? Those are cool tunes, man. And Emotional Rescue.
Yeah. In fact, I'm funny you mention that because it's always bugged me since Spotify. I kind of caught up to the Emotional Rescue album, and there was the one either before it or after it that was just crucified by the media at the time. But again, they weren't traditional records. They could be seen now perhaps as transitional records, but fucking incredible.
Unbelievable.
And again, Emotional Rescue was kind of a reinvention, and it just caught people off guard because it came from left field as far as the Stones and what you were expecting normally from them. But the other project of the Stones that I remember has always gotten like less artistic respect or critical respect than it deserves is Black and Blue.
Unbelievable record. Fingerprint File is one of the greatest songs ever written, ever. When it comes on, Fingerprint File, it's like the ultimate falsetto vocal. It's the ultimate groove. Everything about it is like, and then that Down in a Hole, and they don't have a guitar player.
Hand of Fate.
It's a masterpiece, man.
Yeah, Hand of Fate. And there's also not just Hand of Fate, there's the other one that I adore from that record.
Crazy Mama. Here you go. 1976. Hot Stuff. Come on, dude. Yeah. I smoked weed the first time and heard Hot Stuff and Thin Lizzy's Renegade, and I was off to the races. Hot Stuff, man. Come on.
That's another guy, speaking of which, I would love to see somebody make a movie on Phil Lynott.
Oh.
I idolize him. He's like, he for me occupies this place where you kind of get a bit verklempt when you think about it, his story and his sacrifice. Like with Jimmy, I felt like these guys understood the challenge that they couldn't stay for too long. But I don't know. And the fact that, here's a Black Irishman who was as fiercely and proudly Irish as anyone, and who was such a poet and just, I don't know. I consider he looked like a pirate to me. There was something cool about him this is what a rock star should look like.
He was beyond cool, right? It's like
that double guitar sound that they basically influenced every other group with afterwards. There was a power and a lyricism to not just the music, but I think Thin Lizzy needs to definitely be revised, and we need to look at these bitches again.
I believe that big time. There is a pocket of people, and when we talk Thin Lizzy, we go deep on it. And there are people that are strictly Thin Lizzy, and they will go to the grave like, you don't understand how much influence is popping off these records.
Yeah, true. Even like Lemmy, when Lemmy was alive, he was never shy about the fact that they struck a chord, Lizzy, and everybody kind of wanted a piece of that.
Yeah. It's funny that you talk about Rod and that type of voice, because I love your voice. And if you listen to If You Let Me Stay, it is definitely there. It is, the influence and the whole flavor of it.
Yeah. Definitely. At that particular time, yeah, you're kind of, it's just the business is what it is. It's like, you're like a cute little kid. You got no teeth. And your teeth start coming in, and those two front teeth, and they're just so adorable. And everybody wants to see you like this forever, or at least for a much longer time than you're able to sustain this particular look. So it's almost like people start hating you for growing teeth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, but that particular time you're presenting yourself, you're not even fully developed. You're not even close to being fully developed. But sometimes that's the part of you that they will hang on to and resent that you've moved, that you've grown, as was the blueprint for your life. Absolutely, I was kind of still in that space between, representing or outgrowing your heroes and still going through them as the means to which you found your own expression.
Was that first record were you really digging into a lot of the Temptations? Because it felt like this smoking muscle version of the Temptations to me. And it just had, of course, it was so original to me, but I could see some David in there, and I was like, this is going to bring this whole thing to everyone, revive it.
Not consciously. I was never consciously much of like I said, I was exposed to music late. That doesn't mean that things don't get through to you in your culture that you might hear in passing or when you're somewhere else. But I wasn't allowed to study any pop music or anything of that nature until after I had, like I said, after the age of 15. So it was never a conscious thing with the Temptations. Well, as far as consciously, the biggest Motown influences on me by far were the Jackson 5, Stevie Wonder, and Marvin Gaye. They were the ones that I was most consciously in awe of, being inspired by in a way that I hoped that I was able to somehow bring out of myself whatever it was that I saw in them. But Stevie was definitely a huge influence, a massive influence. Again, much like Rod, I didn't just idolize him as a singer, but as everything that he presented of himself as a songwriter, producer, musician, arranger, a lyricist. He was just, and he was a master of pacing his records, the way he put his albums together, the way he conceptualized, the way he used phrases, the titles of his albums. He was a massive, massive influence on my consciousness as it was developing, that I want to be an artist, to have this kind of space in a person's life, to have this kind of space on the shelf, if you will, that perhaps I can one day be regarded in such a way. But then, it's interesting that you speak, we were speaking of Motown and Stevie, because I remember the first time I met him, I said to him, one of the songs on that album was very much influenced by you. And he said, oh yeah, which one? And so I told him. So it's interesting that basically even sometimes when you transform the work of your idols, I guess if you do it successfully, you get away with it, because he didn't even realize it until I kind of pointed it out. But it wasn't like, I ripped him off, but it's just that, yeah, you can hear very much the influence of that piece of music on this piece of music. And those things aren't conscious. It's not a conscious decision. You don't sit down and go, okay, now I'm going to write a song that shows the influence of this guy or this person. But it just comes out, and you just gather those nuts as they fall from the tree, gather them up, and you see what you have at the end. But it was I'll Never Turn My Back on You. And I showed him the connection between I'll Never Turn My Back on You and Higher Ground, his song Higher Ground, and the whatever. And so it's he was definitely someone that, it's almost embarrassing to say at this stage in your life that you pattern yourself after, and I wouldn't know how true that was, but he was absolutely someone that I wanted to be as significant in the way that in my way than I felt he was to me.
He's unreal, man. I mean, it's just, that guy's a freak of nature. What is the writing process back then and now? Was it acoustic guitar, just sitting down, strumming out stuff? or was it keyboards? How would you sit down and write full tunes?
Everything is in your head first. So, I try to convey to people to think that's somehow very, very impressive. What? You hear it on your head? And I always say, do you hear thoughts in your head? Do you hear your own thoughts? And if they say, yeah, I hear my own thoughts, it's no different. It's no different. I hear the music as thoughts.
Well, it's like you said earlier with the antenna. I truly believe if you're an artist, your body is the antenna and you don't know when it's going to come. It could be on the subway, a plane, or laying in bed. You got to get up and you got to transfer that to paper or onto a recorder because it just comes when it comes.
Right. It's a vibrational spark and it goes through you. And then it resonates with all of the stuff that you've been digesting in any given moment or period of your life to then collaborate with that to create something that you then, you can interpret as art to someone else. But that's mainly how it works. And then from that point, I'll in listening to the song idea in my mind, I will know whether it's a keyboard or a guitar-based song. So that's the best way to describe it. The way we hear thoughts is I hear pieces of music. Sometimes I hear a whole song, almost come to me at once. Most of the time, I hear either the verse or the chorus, and then, which then usually I will finish in, my method being that if I get a chorus and I think, okay, this is a great chorus, then at least to document the idea, I will just basically go with the very first melody that pops into my head as, okay, I'll designate this for now as the verse. And that's something I'm very careful not to dictate. It's something that, like, you say to your dog, okay, now go fetch and I will follow you. Maybe then later, maybe you don't have a bridge or middle eight, but that's those, as you know, as you become comfortable with your craft, you don't feel the pressure to have to finish an idea when you get it. So like I said, occasionally they come and it's there, it's done, that's done. But most of the time, all you really care about is getting whatever the main parts of the song are to you. And you can fill in the dots or fill in the blanks later, which is also pretty, great to be able to trust that you can once you have the inspiration, your craft can finish the job.
Yeah, the chorus always came to me first, and it would just come. The whole thing would come, the words and everything, and then I would have to sit down and figure out what this was about. I figured somebody gave me this from the art gods. Now I have to pen the verses to this and figure out the chords and everything. But it would definitely come like that for me every time.
Yeah, well, that's what it feels like to me, to a collaboration with spirit, with nature, with the other dimensions that exist and all around us. Of course, living in the Wi-Fi era, we've only become more sensitive to that. So, in a way, it just puts more energy, more information as energy wave into the atmosphere, allowing more to draw from. It's just important to know at some point when to take seriously the meditation of when to back away, shut down, and just like downpower the machine, as it were, and just let it basically go undisturbed for as long as you can allow before you re-enter this world of just constant ongoing data.
Can we talk a little bit about your time? I know that it almost ate you alive. Your time in Los Angeles. I live in Los Angeles. I've been here 22 years. I do know the dark sides and I do know the grind. Can we talk about that era in your life?
Sure. I was there for 11 years. I came in 91. Before coming to Los Angeles, I basically saw a lot of things just magically, if you will, pejoratively speaking, fall apart, and realized that at least temporarily it wasn't a very smart mental environment for me to remain in as it regards my health. So, and my spirit. So I was kind of at a crossroads. I knew that I had some arrangements available to me in France, But I kind of had a feeling that if I had gone to France, I might have enjoyed, life might have been friendlier to me there, to the extent that it might not have given me the same motivation to, to work as hard or work as much.
Comfort.
Yeah. And I then was going to change management, and both of the management that I was willing to consider as both management groups that I were considering were English groups, but who were running out of Los Angeles. So that's kind of what tilted me towards Los Angeles. I would have preferred New York probably energetically because I was born in Harlem. So it's actually a bit more supportive of my energetics. But karma was taking me to Los Angeles. So I went there. Basically, right before the year preceding, I spent a lot of time in Italy. I had some friends in Florence who basically invited me to come hang out, and it's like one of those long weekends that turns into you questioning why you need to be somewhere other than where you are at that particular time. So I wound up spending a lot of time going back and forth between England, where I was still based at the time, and in Italy, where my psyche was being nursed by some very good friends and very considerate associates, if you will. Then having chosen basically which team of people I wanted to continue going forward with, I came to Los Angeles realizing that things had really gone surreal in England. It was a space that I kind of needed to be free of for a while. And, I didn't know how long I would be there. Like I said, I was there for 11 years, and I just kind of assumed I'd be there like 3 years, maybe enough to just like soak up some a new space and just determine where I wanted to go next. I was certain that I preferred being in Europe because it's just a place that's overall a bit closer to my sensibility and the way I kind of want to live my life without having to always live or be expected to live in such a defensive posture, such a posture where you have to always like apologize for yourself or explain yourself or make too many pantomimes to make other people, not feel as dominated by their own fears. At some point, you just kind of don't want to be as responsible anymore for other people's perceptions. And you just kind of want to get on, in a place that is, more mature because it's just been around for so much longer. It's not about superiority or these people are better than these people. It's that these people's cultures have proven over centuries. And so you inherit a stability as a part of the sensibility that you undertake. Europe being like a big, especially to us Americans, like a big giant one country with all these different neighborhoods, all these different villages who speak these different languages and all these different tribes, but they do each offer a certain thing. They do each offer a certain level of achievement, a level of where their karma has successfully taken them. And you certainly feel that when you're engaged with them in an exchange, in my case, that the relationships are less ephemeral. They're less based on where you're trending at the moment, which certainly could be helpful if that's a positive thing that's happening for you. But they don't hold their relationships with their artists and with their culture in such a fickle way. So you basically are allowed to mature. You're allowed to go through your stages, your phases. You're expected to. It's inevitable, of course. That's the attitude that you run into. As you alluded to before, Los Angeles is a place that has so many cool and awesome things about it, which is what's so seductive about it, is its dark side is absolutely life-changing to behold. I mean, it's a vortex that sucks you in such as no other vortex I've ever had to encounter. But for all of that, there are reasons why it's very difficult to leave that area once you become enamored of it. The only thing I can say I really miss, now that weed has been legalized here as well, The only thing I can really say I miss are my relationship to like the San Gabriel Mountains and the landscape of California is something pretty magical, and how closely it resembles the landscape of Spain. So in fact, it has a Spanish name, California, whatever. But it's just to say that for all of the things that are so wonderful about Los Angeles, you pay a price for what it is, what it has to offer. And there was a period of time where after maybe 3 to 4 years, I kept questioning and looking for the inner guidance as to when I might be given permission to go back to Europe. Because after about 3 years, the face of Los Angeles that I began to deal with more exhaustively became apparent. And you just realize that the ethos and the values of that place are specific to what that town is focused on. And if you're not in alignment with that, if you're not in attunement with that, then you're pretty much, your shelf life won't be long there. It will carbon date your ass as quick as possible. And if they let you live, you'll find yourself somewhere else that's more attuned to just how you want to roll. You know, the type of artist I always saw myself as, I understood that the industry as it was configured was not going to support that, was not comfortable supporting that.
It's funny to think about how much organic hippie music has come out of California. But also at the same time, how brutal California can be on an artist. That old saying of spit you, chew you up and spit you out. It's definitely not for the weak. And sometimes I wonder if it's for anybody to be in Los Angeles that long. It's like, it's not an old man's game, Mm-hmm. It's a young man's game, Los Angeles. And sometimes you walk around and you go, man, should I be here? But I was born and raised here. I was born in Yosemite. I'm a mountain man. I'm a desert man. I'm an ocean man. So the vibes, as the old, Pacino and Godfather 3, they pull me back in. I could be in New York living in Gramercy for 3 years. And all of a sudden I'm like I wake up and I'm like, I'm out, it's wild.
Yeah. It's a place, because of the sunny nature, it's a very solar place. It's going to draw a very solar type personality. It's like a Venus flytrap. So it's going to draw those very personalities that it can most easily crush. That's just the way of it. So if you don't have some mercenary within you to basically be utilized to your advantage, you're fucked. And it's not the place for everyone. Because of the nature of the businesses that dominate it, it's a town with very high turnover. A town with very high turnover tends to be best suited by a certain repetition that allows it to retain its memory even as it's losing a lot of memory, with people departing. And, so and of course, also places with high turnover aren't going to have the same neighborly vibes available to it as it would if you were growing up in Mayberry or RFD or some shit like that. It's just that way. But it is a magical place. There is no doubt that it's a place of magic, but it's also a place where you pay a very heavy tax for that, for participating and utilizing that magic.
You really do. Right there in the early 90s is really kind of when hip hop really starts to explode. I mean, of course, in the 80s, we've got hip hop is brewing, but by the 90s, NWA hits, and then everything changes, the whole landscape. Did you ever find yourself diving into some hip hop flavor, or were you always just sticking to what was in your core?
The great maestro Billie Holiday saying, "God bless the child who's got his own." I've always felt like I was given my own and I didn't have to follow what anybody else was doing. If I'm interested in what someone else is doing, it's because I'm a fan of music as well. And just a lover of expression. And anything interesting is going to pique my interest. It's just that way. But no, I never felt to follow anybody into anything. I've always seen relationship to other artists as, my ideal was at that point in the 60s where, the Who makes a record and then the Stones feel like they have to top the record. Then the Beatles feel like they have to top the record, and then there's the Kinks and they come out with a different, so that's how it's supposed to work. It's each artist should basically be the permission for the next artist to just fucking get on with it. Okay? Stop looking, stop waiting for approval, stop waiting for, remember the cliche, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, or it's easier to get, forgiveness than permission, at least. Just get on with it. And so, but you have to understand that I was very parallel to that situation and saw another side of the rise of hip hop that others perhaps might not have noticed or didn't have to live through. Now, let me preface this by saying that as an art form, it is legit and brilliant as any other art form that has been given a name to encompass all that it entails or all that has gone into representing what hip hop is. That it has elicited from artists great art is not in any way in doubt. But if you remember at the time, there was something happening socially with myself, with Prince, with Michael Jackson, with Madonna. We had audiences that didn't respect barriers, okay? And so if 1% is going to control 99%, they have to have their barriers in place. They have to divide and conquer. When you have artists who can bring people together as diversely as we could, it doesn't matter what you're singing about, you become a politician to the state, period. Fuck what you're singing about. You can be singing about put them on the glass. You can be singing like, I like big butts and I cannot lie. It doesn't matter. If you're bringing bikers and grandmothers and rednecks and black nationalists and all these and age groups together, you are now of great concern to your government, period.
Right.
And they were watching you like a hawk because it takes a tremendous amount of any country's budget to keep in place the various mechanisms that have been posited in order to make it easier for us to be governed.
Fear of unity. Fear of
people who are supposed to be at each other's necks, accusing each other for being the problem, not seeing that, no, it's neither one of us, because if neither one of us has shit, how can we be each other's problem? You ain't got shit, I don't have shit. So how can I be the reason why you are not getting ahead when you don't have anything and I don't have anything either?
Yeah.
Okay, so meanwhile, we share a spliff and then realizing there's somebody else that's fucking us. So right, the fear of discovering who is behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz, who's behind the curtain, it consumes a tremendous amount of the national budget, of the community budget, period. So when you have artists whose music is forming a kind of new political aristocracy, which is kind of helping people get into the idea of not caring about how someone looks and what all of that. Even the earliest beginnings of what now has matured, or the earlier beginnings of what is now is this generation's LGBTQ2 situation. That had its roots there. We had a large part to do with that. We had a large part to do with the goldenization of the tribes, because exponentially, since our influence, since we were there, exponentially, the amount of like mixed race people that have now exist in communities across the world, boom, we had an influence on all of that. So the man is sitting here looking at it like, no, we have to put a stop to this. The answer was to support hip hop for two basic reasons. The economic model meant you don't have to spend $500,000 trying to break a band on the road and in the studio. You can spend $5,000, a bag of fucking weed, buy them a Mackie desk, and just tell them to go and do what the fuck they want. Okay? If you do that 10 times, 2 or 3 of them are going to come back and you're going to go, yes, that's it. We can work. So the business model worked. It was less expensive investment in initial overhead investment to get hip hop music off the ground. Because as large at that time, It was largely at the time composed of samples. So there was a lot of stuff that just made it like cut and paste. And you was no less an art form just because it was music's collage period. It was music's collage period. Collage is a great art form, but collage is not Picasso. The point is, there's like they're different mediums, and doesn't mean that the medium hasn't reached this level of respect that it deserves. But the point is, that was one part, that it was less expensive investment. The second and most important part is it reintroduced emphasis on Black nationalism. Okay, I adored Public Enemy. I loved Public Enemy. They were special. They were magic. They were powerful. But come on, it was Black nationalism, pop Black nationalism, if you will, mainstreamed, brilliantly fucking done. That's what they were supporting at the time. They wanted to unmix the situation. So what happened during that time? Crack was allowed to be poured into the streets with very little money. You could find on the plantation where the poor exists. It's not very difficult, to find people who are willing to do almost whatever you ask of them to get out of poverty. And since we keep a lot of people poor, there's always a big talent pool amongst the poor. So you can always go into a ghetto, you can always go on a plantation, a reservation, and know that you're going to have a concentrated focus of talent who don't have many other options except the ones you present. So then you're preaching, what you're really pushing is then concurrent with crack being introduced was when they allowed the first George Bush campaign, Willie Horton, when the scary Black dude image came back really hard. So the same people who are backing the politicians pushing the law and order are the same fuckers investing in the record companies pushing these records, because these records help balance and create the demand on the other side.
Segregation, promoting segregation.
As well as promoting images that can easily keep white people segregated and on their side of the line, where they're more easily controlled and manipulated. Do you understand? So what I'm saying is, you're asking me to comment on hip hop as an artist, but it's my history is intertwined with the rise of hip hop in one of its early stages, not what's happening now, as a tool that would allow for Black nationalism to come back into the mix, reclaim a voice, to challenge the multicultural kind of thing that we were promoting, because we really were causing a lot of conversation in some of the great grand houses of the establishment in the effect that we were having. I remember, I can remember but Madonna, myself, Prince and Michael, George Michael, there was like a group of us who were just smashing boundaries. And something had to be done to counter this. And that's why money was invested in hip hop. This isn't to say it didn't mature into its own art form for its own sake. But initially it was invested in because it was a political tool that would allow those divisions responsible for such things, on behalf of the gatekeepers of our societies, to resegregate our society.
That's heavy, man. That's heavy to look at hip hop in that form. I know that I went to a lot of hip hop concerts, but me being in San Francisco, it was multicultural for sure. And so I looked at it as the next wave of rock. I do agree with you that it was a record company's way of just turn and burn, cheap music being made. There's only a handful of classic hip hop records. If you try to sell a hip hop CD at a store like at a resale store, they won't take it. So it is here, and mostly the market is that now of cheap music made on laptops, made for no money. So that's wild, to think about. No one goes into a studio and throws down 24-inch tape on a Neve console and rocks a hip hop record. It doesn't happen. So I do see minimal money into the product and maximum returns.
Absolutely. That became the business model. The 90s was a very difficult time, and it was to sow the seeds of the destruction of an industry that now does not exist in the form in which it used to exist in. Several factors were to blame. One was sampling other people's records. Again, made it easier to not have to invest in new artists with too much money, new ideas. It was just easier to basically use the litmus of whatever had been popular before, sample it, reformulate it, put a new name to it, and we can sell it that way. That was one thing that weakened the ability of an A&R department to develop its muscles and develop talent. The second one was then the rise of the DJ. Okay, I'm a fan of Moby. I'm a friend of Moby. But again, initially, of course, now these guys are making tons of money. But initially, it was just, again, it was you find a guy, a DJ, boom, you do a deal with him. There's not much overhead to pay him. You pay him about this much, give him some coke. He's good. He'll come back with you. He'll bring back his work. And then from there, you can decide how much money you want to invest going forward. So that was an aspect. The 401k, that fucked up a lot of executives' minds when they started getting distracted by 401ks. So it just became a matter of taking the easy way out. But the last thing about the 90s that was created a problem was digital reissues. That once they realized that they could sell and keep reselling the same record over and over again. Again, why should you put out any overhead to bring in new music when you can just keep releasing Kind of Blue? Okay, yep. Dude, I personally bought at least like 9-10 copies of Kind of Blue. Every time I saw some bullshit remastered, triple remastered, now remastered with a quarter pound of cheese,
From the original source. It's like, finally, exactly. The original source? Where were the other ones remastered from?
I remember have bought so many copies of that record and so many copies of Pet Sounds.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm a sentimental asshole. I want to support my loved ones who are my mentors. I want to support Brian Wilson, his estate, his whole situation. I want to support Miles Davis and his estate. So, yeah. But what I'm saying is, if they knew they got an asshole who's willing to buy 8 copies of the same fucking CD, why should they invest and approve monies to be spent beating the ferns, beating the hedges to find new talent? It's too risky when they've already got a catalog, a vault full of fucking shit that they can just keep creatively re-releasing. Yeah. Between re-releasing, between sampling, and then the rise of the DJ and the 401k, those 4 factors fucking killed the music business ability to understand how to develop talent. So by the time they panicked and realized they were losing their market, they no longer had the muscle memory of an A&R department to pull them through those times. It wasn't Sean Parker's fault that they fucked up. It was them who fell asleep at the wheel. It's them who was just fucking going to parties and conferences, snorting all the fucking coke they could find. God bless them. Work hard, party hard, whatever. But what I'm saying is the shit that artists had to go through in the 90s was incredible. Okay. And then you shift from that to then going to a factory like Orlando, working with some entrepreneur, some impresario who can basically deliver you 5 willing, obedient boys. They're not going to ask too many questions. They're not going to start asking too many questions until their voice starts breaking. But by the time their voices start breaking, time to get rid of them. Okay? There's a reason why our industry tends to not feel comfortable dealing with people over 40. There's no 40-year-old artist who's getting a brand new deal unless he's being signed to the jazz division or classical division. That's because they realize by the time you're 40, you figure some shit out. You know that you're being fucked. You can say, come on, guys, come on. But, okay, so, this is why we are now in this situation, because the 90s was when basically all of the snakes came out, all the rot, that was set in, just basically tore down the foundation of what the situation was, allowing, I almost had it. I was going to say Spotify. I didn't mean to say Spotify. Whatever Sean Parker's company was at the time.
Oh, yeah, Napster.
Yeah. Napster just basically it's funny that the image was a cat, because Napster was the mouse that came into this hole through the kitchen that was just completely ignored because they were too busy focusing on shit that had nothing to do with music and everything to do with trying to squeeze as much profit as possible out of as few nickels in circulation as possible.
I will say this, though. Chuck D, I probably learned more from Chuck D about the suppression of the black man. And I learned more history from him from these records. And it did give him a platform to let people know, for the night. Look, I'm not naive and I'm not dumb. I grew up in the city, but the deep stuff of John Wayne being racist, the deep stuff of his heroes not appearing on any stamps, burn Hollywood, burn, all of these messages. It was a huge platform for him to get out the message out there.
And there's no reason why he should be apologized for on any level. I was a huge Public Enemy fan. I was a great admirer. One of the greatest concerts I've ever been to is seeing those bitches at the Brixton Academy with Chrissy Hynde and Rosanna Arquette. I remember the three of us going together and all three of us being just fuck. Same time, if you've ever been to the Brixton Academy, it's like a massive, huge sweat box.
Yeah.
So it's so much weed going around. You don't have to smoke some shit. It's there, And no, but what I'm saying is, because his message could be sold as black nationalists, because his message could be sold as separatists upon the convenience of the corporations, I'm saying he was allowed to expand a voice that he might not have been able to expand if he was just talking about love and peace. It's not to say that he didn't take full and brilliant, complete advantage of it. Plus, he's got one of the greatest voices of all time.
Unreal.
Okay. This guy, I could hear this guy recite the back of a fucking sandwich you get from a vending machine. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that the reason why there was so much emphasis pushed on those black images was because it was trying to re-grab back again the attention span and say, no, not these androgynous kind of looking, mixed race black dudes, not these people. LL Cool J walked like a panther. Come on, man. Brilliant. But we also know what kind of panther they're hoping to imply amongst those that they want to scare. So you've got a double-edged sword there. You've got walking like a panther that is going to appeal to your core audience who are going to read it differently. And then you've got the suburbs who are going to walk like a Black Panther. Separatism, segregation, ooh, scary black dudes. Okay, let's admit how successful a business model Scary Black Dudes is. It's one of our most tried and true marketing devices. Scary Black Dude. Scary Black Dude has got more power than anybody in America because Scary Black Dude gets neighborhoods built. Scary Black Dude gets politicians elected. He gets more monies for police departments. Scary Black Dude is one powerful motherfucker, man. And he's not going to be retired for quite some while. Why? Because Scary Black Dude is useful. He works. All right. And as long as we're not making efforts to obliterate the dumbness of this, we always have the natural divisions in place that allows each generation to have to discover for themselves. It's all a trick. It's some Wizard of Oz shit. It's just Scary Black Dude is just as nervous as you are, man. Okay. But Scary Black Dude is expected to put up with an even greater front than you are because he's been painted as Scary Black Dude, meaning the only way we ever pay attention to Scary Black Dude is when Scary Black Dude acts like Scary Black Dude. So it's just kind of like, this is the way that situation breaks down, where does not mean that the role and the space that an artist is given to the platform to practice their crafts, that these gentlemen did not maximize. I don't have to agree with what you're saying to acknowledge that you're creating great art that stands the test of time and has a need and necessity of existence. I'm just saying that it was also helpful to the promotion of these great groups, that the industry was looking to create something that would allow them to separate things a bit more, because things were getting blurred in a way that were making a lot of establishment beacons uncomfortable.
It's heavy, man. I can't even tell you how excited I was to talk to you, man. It's a lifelong fan, man. I mean, beyond. I'm fired up on your new record. There it is. Pandora's
Playhouse.
It's a double record. I love, I was listening to it last night. You do a Stones cover. Time Is on My Side. Killing it.
Yeah.
But yeah. I love Don't Leave Me Here. Don't Break My Balls. Great one. The Kings of Avalon is just beautiful. And I'm so excited. When did you record this? Where did you record it? Did you play all the instruments? Let's get into that real quick here.
I recorded it in 4 sessions. That I when I'm recording, putting a project together, I also like to reveal each chapter as it goes, like works in progress. And so I released them in chapters. So, it could be anywhere from 3 to 6 or 7 songs at a time that will constitute a chapter. And each chapter, of course, is in correlation with the sessions that precede it. So, meaning if I've had 5 chapters or 4 chapters, I've basically had 4 sessions.
Right.
So I began the project. It was over 4 sessions. The project started in February. Then we had to kind of make the immediate adjustments for COVID. So we lost a good 3 months worth of time to COVID, really, as far as actual work time. So the last chapter wasn't finished until September of last year. So basically the span of time that the 4 chapters took, the 4 sessions took, the 4 seasons, if you will, were from February to September. And which probably would have constituted 3 months worth of actual work, once it was consolidated. And it was just an interesting project because it was a project that I was really itching to get to since I've finished its predecessor, Prometheus and Pandora. As I understood, even as I was working on the last project, that getting to this project and finishing it was somehow unique and a very important part of my timeline. It was something like a completion of a chapter that I needed to finish. So I was very eager to get started on it once I was ready. Initially, we were going to start the project the previous October to our beginning in February. But again, there were some things going around that made it more difficult for us to do it at that time and coordinate everything the way we wanted. So it got started in February and then immediately took on this gravity that probably would not have otherwise existed because of COVID. And, I've been asked, of course, how that affected the process. And, when you're going through crisis and pandemics and things of that nature, you're very blessed to have something to focus on.
Oh, yeah.
Something important that galvanizes and keeps your attention zoned in on something besides just panic and worry, So having undertaken the project, of course, I initially thought, oh, what a curse. My project is already cursed and I'm starting it and then this thing is starting. But then once I realized that as I could always go to my workplace, and so since my studio is only maybe a 20-minute walk from where I live, I saw it as actually a blessing in disguise to at least take something, a negative condition, and turn it into something positive. Because like I said, it's very focusing. When the best way for you to survive is to focus on the work in front of you, it just makes that much easier to deal with. And also you're capitalizing on an energy that's present in your atmosphere around you that wouldn't otherwise be present if you weren't going through the pandemic, which is going to add a certain immediacy and poignancy to your work that you cannot in any way manufacture otherwise.
Also, it's gonna make you, like, hey, who knows? Could this be the last project I ever do? And dig deep into that. Here's my record. Who knows what was going to happen to mankind? At a time where people were just like, everyone's going to die. It was like a crazy fear, right?
Yes, of course. It does call your mortality into question, which is why I wrote Mr. Skeleton. Mr. Skeleton was a part of the very first sessions where it was just kind of me getting my frustration, like, what the fuck? So Mr. Skeleton is my WTF contribution to the situation. I did record in my own studio. I have 2 studios that I call Treehouse Studios, not very far from where I live in Milan. I did play all the instruments except for 3 songs. The very first song, Pandora's Plight, the piano was played by a good friend of mine, Antonio Ferrao. And the Stone song, Time Is On My Side, I'm playing half the instruments, and the other gentleman who was co-producing the record, he's playing the other half of the instruments. And on the contribution that I was fortunate enough to have from the Avalanches, I basically left the production to them, and I pretty much just wrote my part and sang.
Man, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I was hearing some clavinet in this record. It sounds fantastic. The clavinet is, I think, the greatest keyboard besides the B3 ever invented. The sound immediately is just, it's epic. It just bump, 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 it just comes on. It's just got this movement, right?
Yeah. Well, obviously, it wasn't invented by Stevie, clearly, but
right.
It was greatly popularized by him. And the reason he fell in love with it was because he was knocked out by Hendrix, and he wanted a sound that was as close to electric guitar as he could find.
Well, I can't thank you enough for talking to me. I hope to meet you one day. I hope to talk to you again. These are the type of conversations that just really, really open my mind and just, it's old school to talk to somebody that has deep passion of art, not worried about fame or money. And that is basically kind of been my tracks that I've been on my whole life.
Let me just say that I can testify that I've got nothing against money. I think money is a wonderful thing. It's just that money is not my father.
Right.
Money's not my master. And I've always felt that the best way to make your money is to follow your passion, that your passion is the shortcut to your money. And my money has actually never been better, Dean. My money's good, my everything's good, but all because I put my faith in the right thing, because I put the horse in front of the car and not the other way around. I just believe that if you follow what you love and you pay attention to what you're doing and you put your time in, the money will follow.
I believe
money
that.
can be seduced. Money can be seduced just like anything else. And the other thing I just want to say what's been an awesome thing for me is that also on my birthday a couple of days ago, Sony, who owns my pre-post millennium rock work, have officially renamed everything Sananda Maitreya, and have basically determined a few months ago that it was time to bury any particular hatchets that might have been outstanding between us, and let's just move on. So I have to thank Sony also for finally allowing their part of the process to open up.
That's
so that
beautiful.
I can now combine all aspects of my life without any kind of confusion. And so, it has been a difficult relationship in the past, But these new people that came in have really done fair by me, and I'm very grateful. So now everywhere you look will be Sananda Maitreya, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to say this on your program.
Oh, that is the best news I've heard in years. That's right up there with Chappelle, getting back to Chappelle's show, man. That is beautiful. And like I said, lifelong fan. It was an honor to have you on. You have the voice of the gods. Your songwriting is incredible. And those live shows I saw you are some of the greatest live concerts I've ever seen in my life. And thank you and your wife for making this happen.
Well, listen, for you and others who might be interested, you go to sananda.org, /radio. I've got 2 radio things now that I've been able to pull together. One is just my own radio station that plays streams my own music. And I've got another situation which I'm really excited about, where I just play all my favorite records from the very beginning till yesterday, if you will. And it doesn't matter the genre. I'm playing hardcore with classical, with jazz, with country, with hip hop, with electronica, with EDM. I'm just putting all this great shit together and just letting you decide for yourself that great music is just great music and doesn't have to be chopped down into these little places and spaces.
That's beautiful. That's how this show is. I just have on whatever's great. They're on here. I'm going to give you 2 artists to check out and spin on your show. One would be Marcus King. His vocals and songwriting is amazing. Marcus King. And the other one would be the Rival Sons. These guys write songs that are knockouts and their voices are deep. And then the third one, the Warren Treaty. Check those 3 out. And I think you'll enjoy that.
I'm disappointed you didn't name BTS.
BTS?
Yeah, I'm just fucking with you, dude.
All right. I hope to meet you one day.
I thank you again, dude. I really appreciate it. God bless you. All right.
Stay in touch, please.